IEC is capacity. I think they lack the capacity. I think they need to be revamped, and let's get a new IEC.
Problem we have and the dilemma we have is the laws, our laws. Because if the law is very clear, there's nothing you can do about it. Let's say, for instance, the issue of the UDP and the IEC. So the court relied on a law, whether it's a good law or not, but they relied on it, and you cannot challenge it. If the court decide to rely on the law, and the law is there and very clear, there's nothing you can do.
For us, our work is to go around the communities to engage them, and most of the time, the feedback that we get from the people is that these MPs are not delivering. The promises they give, they will never fulfill. In fact, not only fulfill, but they don't even appear. Once they get into office, you don't see them until another electoral cycle. So that is something that is going to discourage them, and of course we will try to encourage people to help them to understand the importance of the parliament.
This is my first visit to the Gambia, but I am very familiar with the role that civil society has played here since 2016 in supporting this country's democratic experiment.
We have an established notion that, in fact, voting for somebody is like helping the person to be well off. Like in our local language, they say, you are helping the person to be better than you, because that's the way they see that election is supposed to deliver for you. You are putting somebody there to be able to at least to steer the development agenda of your aspirations, your wish for the next 5 years.
We anticipate a very low turnout for this election because of the very fact that most Gambians seem to have lost some confidence in the ability of, the quality of our National Assembly members, as well as their ability to actually represent their people adequately.
I think there is still room for improvement in terms of sensitizations, because we have civic education here, but most of the times, the only time they go out is around election. I believe this kind of institution should have been in all the regions to be sensitizing people, and also it can be streamlined in our curriculum.
There are definitely a lot of things not quite right with the IEC. I mean, like he said, you go to their website, it's virtually empty. I mean, even the electoral laws, you hardly can access some of those things at the IEC website.
The parliamentary elections, it is my belief that we're going to vote based on party lines. We're going to vote based on other social factors like ethnicity. And for instance, during the community outage we had in Masembe and in Jalambere, there was this old woman in Jalambere who said she is not going to vote for a particular candidate because she has not been seeing him around when they have funerals, when they have other social functions.
We've seen what happened during the presidential election, the nominations, they rejected certain candidates, and the courts, ruled against them and other things. So if they had a very good, effective legal department, definitely, they would have advised them to interpret some of these laws in a much better way. Again, we've seen, the demographic of the constituencies. Some constituencies, you have less than 2,000 voters. Others who have almost 50,000 voters. And they all have the same voice and the same, mandate in the National Assembly. That is definitely not democracy. I think the IEC need to work on all those things.
And again, somebody else did this maths, that their MP, for a whole 5 years, all the time that he spoke in Parliament, putting all the times together, he spoke not more than 30 minutes. Yes, for 5 years, he spoke not more than 30 minutes on the floor of the House. And this also tells you that education is very much important. And it is important that when Parliament is having session, their electorates know what they are up to. And that is why some would want to push for the local language to be spoken in Parliament.
Other thing, of course, is with respect to the courts. As lawyers, and I'm not the only lawyer in the House, Mr. Juve is also a lawyer, I hasten to add, we are usually very cautious when it comes to commenting or critiquing the courts or the work of the courts, because judicial independence and independence of the judiciary is sacrosanct. So in other words, we take it as it is.
It's amicus curiae, is it?
Coming to the courts, like you said, I think the problem is the laws. And also, let us not take chances. Let us not be naive. The Human Rights Commission is there. The courts are there. But when they make decisions like the diaspora voting, the court said they should vote. But at the end, the IEC just said there's no money.
You can look at it from an academic standpoint. Sometimes the court can deliver a ruling or a judgment. As a legal scholar or academic, if you feel strongly about it, either for or against, you can put something into writing. That is for academia. But I think it's also important for us to realize that the courts can only deal with what is put before them. And now here, we're averting our minds to the doctrine of separation of powers. It is not the duty of the courts to actually make law. As Omar rightly highlighted, when they're confronted with a particular legal problem, they look at the rules. What does the law say?
And they don't necessarily make recommendations
Exactly. Exactly. So when the law is clear and is in black and white, the court has no option but to apply it. Now, of course, that could possibly ignite a debate within civil society circles that, okay, yes, the court is right, this is what the law says, but we feel strongly that this law really is not in the best interest of society. So can we start something to initiate law reform, for example, engage parliament, engage the stakeholders. Those are the institutions that are competent to actually change the law. But sometimes the courts, I believe, are unfairly criticized because a lot of these things are actually beyond the scope of the work they are called upon to do. They are called upon to interpret and enforce the law. So that is the law. What is on paper, no matter how unpalatable it may seem, is what they should be bound by. Now, those of us in civil society, of course, have the luxury of going beyond the scope of what the courts can do. We can look at the decision and say, okay, if this is what Parliament voted for, if this is what the Act says, okay, that's fine, that's well and good. The court have done their job, but we want it to be changed. So now we're going to lobby Parliament, we're going to lobby the executive, we're going to lobby stakeholders to make sure that there is reform and there is change in the law.
We need to have voters understand the relevance of the legislature, the parliament, and the function it plays in a democratic state, and the need for those elected representatives to be true representatives of the constituents they are elected to serve.
Especially when considered in light of the fact that we all go to elections so that we can elect the people that we believe better embody the qualities that we want in a leader who can give us a better chance of improving our socio-economic.
I was going to say that elections give people hope in terms of, what is going to come next, hope in terms of new development, hopes in terms of economic and social, improvements in our lives. And I think basically this is why people vote, and this is why people should vote.
To help people understand that, and indeed to help the elected officials understand that they are elected there to serve the entire constituencies they've been elected to represent.
So now people are being educated, they're being enlightened, they're actually being sensitized. But we really need to look at the impact of that. Is that increase in sensitization and education being reflected in the outputs or the results that we're actually looking at?
It's not entirely a bad thing that people may vote for a candidate because they like the individual or because they're a member of a particular political party. In fact, that animates elections. It causes voter dynamism and support, a desire for participation. But once elected, there's definitely a need for those elected officials to represent the country through the constituencies, the entirety of the voters they've been elected to represent.
National Human Rights Commission, the courts, and other oversight bodies. As a citizenry, I think we can do more to support them. I've never really seen a peaceful protest in support of the NHRC, for example, to say, okay, National Human Rights Commission has made a recommendation, hypothetically perhaps, to the police and they have failed to comply. So in fact, we as concerned citizens or CSO were coming out to protest in support of that. Not that it needs to go that far, but perhaps just to highlight.
I'm encouraged by what I have understood today for the following reason. Not because there are no problems here. there are no challenges in the Gambia, of course not. You face, in fact, some very considerable challenges. And I appreciate your comments, sir, a lot, because you really crystallized, I think, what a lot of the lived reality of many of the citizens in the country and what they experience day to day.